We begin with the Fox News alert. Israeli voters are right now at the polls deciding their country's future.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seeking a fourth term in office. He's now promising a Palestinian state will not be established on his watch.
John Huddy is live in Jerusalem with the very latest. Good morning to you, John.
Well, Elizabeth, Stephen Bryan, good morning to you. Yeah, that's one of the issues that's been brought up, of course, the Palestinian state, among other ones, including the economy. That's a big issue here. Cost of living, high cost of living. Take a look. We're seeing live shots of the pictures of the polls. It's already, the voter turnout is pretty high already. It's looking good. Traditionally, of the 5.8 million registered voters, in the past, we've seen voter turnout anywhere from 60 to close to 80%. So this is expected to be a pretty high voter turnout this year. Now, let me talk about how Israel's government system works. It's what's called a proportional representation system of government. Basically, the prime minister controls the most seats in the Knesset. The Knesset has 120 seats. So basically, the number of seats that a party holds is based upon the percentage of votes that party gets in the election. So, for instance, if the Likud party's, Prime Minister Netanyahu's party, gets 20% of the vote, that equates to 24 seats in the Knesset. That said, real quick, take a look. The headline of today's paper, obviously it's about the election. It says Mr. Prime Minister Isaac Herzog of the Zionist Union Party and then Prime Minister Netanyahu of the Likud Party. So, you know, Steve, Bryan, and Elizabeth, we're waiting to see what happens in the exit polls as they come in a little bit later this evening. Back to you.
It's just a little after 2 in the afternoon in Jerusalem.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking a fourth term. He vowed Monday that a Palestinian state would not be created on his watch. Barry Peterson is in Tel Aviv and says that issue may not be what decides the outcome. Barry, good morning.
Hey, Charlie, it's a lovely day here. It's warm and sunny and mild. That'll help get people out to vote. Election Day in Israel is a national holiday, so there's really no reason not to go to the polls. There's a lot of emotion going on in this election. They are expecting a record turnout. If the early bird gets the worm, score one for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who voted minutes after the polls opened at 7 a.m. His main challenger is American-educated Isaac Herzog, whose party was ahead. But Israeli media says the race tightened over the weekend as undecideds decided. As for the turnout, which might hit 80%, credit the Americans, or at least American political expertise being used against Netanyahu, which had people like Ofer Shamir going door to door, saying it's time to replace the government. It's a classic American get-out-the-vote campaign. 25,000 volunteers knocking on 200,000 doors until polls close at 10 o'clock tonight, and it's never been done here before. Until Nimrod Dweck helped found Victory 2015 with donations from Israelis and Americans, and hired Jeremy Bird, who ran the Obama campaign ground game in 2008 and 2012.
When you were learning from the American consultants, what was the best thing that they told you?
I think the best thing they told us that we need to meet people.
Face to face.
Face to face.
There are a lot of big issues here, the Iran talks, the Palestinian questions, but the people we talk to are also angry about high taxes, high prices, a lower standard of living. A lot of people here will be voting their pocketbooks. Jeff?
Barry Peterson, thank you very much.
Well, it's possible, Wolf. He's down 4 seats in the polls behind Isaac Herzog and Zionist Camp Party. Some of the other left-wing parties are also doing very well. It's entirely possible that Netanyahu does not have enough support to form a government, but there are more right-wing voters and right seats out there than the left. So if they come out in big numbers, Netanyahu can turn it around with support from the center-right, those far-right parties. And that's what he's been doing these last few days, making these statements about not supporting a Palestinian state. He's trying to energize the right to come out and vote. And there's some evidence he's starting to turn it around. The Israeli channels tonight saying he is closing the gap. And everyone here says don't count out Netanyahu. They don't call him the Teflon prime minister for nothing, Wolf.
Yeah, it's going to be a close election. I'm sure we won't get results, obviously, till tomorrow night. You know, the last statements, though, that he's been making about no withdrawals from the West Bank, no concessions to the Palestinians, no longer supporting what's called a two-state solution, Israel alongside a new state of Palestine. He has supported that over the past few years, even though the peace process hasn't gone anywhere at all. Why is he doing this?
Well, you know, the left would simply argue that he's showing his true colors, and that's why that Herzog has pledged to restart the peace process should leave this country. I think Israeli voters who were supportive of a peace process weren't going to vote for him anyway. It's not clear whether the right, who he's trying to get out and vote by giving these, you know, controversial statements that the right wants to hear, really believes him. I've heard that a lot of people don't believe the promises that he makes, particularly on the Palestinian issue. But, you know, Wolf, he's distancing himself from these long-standing positions that he supported a two-state solution. So if he is reelected, you know, this is really going to further complicate relations with the Obama administration. You know, Secretary of State John Kerry would like to take another go with this. So if Netanyahu is reelected, I'm not sure he's going to be very successful at that.
Yeah.
I think we expect from the government security and financial security.
Expect the next coalition, and the coalition is not very good for our country. It's not the best solution for us. We need one party, it's no matter which one.
Well, there are some problems, you know, country problems, which unfortunately I'm not very sure that those can be resolved. But there are also some internal issues related to, you know, internal problems the country is facing live here, and those things I think can be fixed or at least improved. And so I expect at least those issues to be improved.
I hope to have a government that really is worried about the interests of its people and not only about declarations in the news and money for people who are close to the political plate, you can say.
תודה רבה.
מי שרוצה שינוי, תקווה ובאמת עתיד טוב יותר לישראל, שיצביע עבור המחנה הציוני בראשותי.
Netanyahu came in second in 2009, still ended up becoming prime minister. So the elections in Israel are very complicated. There are 11 different parties vying for power, not two. But let's assume for a moment that should happen. God forbid, from my perspective. Then a couple of things happen. There's going to be popping of corks of champagne in the White House. But ironically, the real lamentations are going to be coming from places like Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Because Herzog, who is the primary opponent for Benjamin Netanyahu, has said that he trusts President Obama to get a good deal with Iran. So I would say that the Israelis are going to make a tough decision. If they trust President Obama to properly deal with Iran, then Herzog is their guy. If they don't think that President Obama is anything other than an appeaser, they better vote for Netanyahu.
Netanyahu has gotten increasingly strong in his rhetoric in the past couple of days, apparently understanding that he might lose this thing. And he's taken some positions that have made some big headlines. Like he's now said he's against a two-state solution, that there will not be a Palestinian state, which is a reversal of a big speech he gave back in 2009. And he's saying that he's going to expand the Jewish settlements, which have been such a source of contention in these Mideast peace negotiations. So he's really, sticking it in the eye of the Palestinians in terms of any peace deal that has been attempted in the past. What will that do if Mr. Netanyahu is reelected?
Well, I think it's a position of realism. There is no real legitimate two-state solution to be had. It's a wonderful political concept, but to having two different governments, one of whom doesn't really even acknowledge the existence of the other one, trying to govern the same piece of real estate is utterly unrealistic. And I've never felt that it was a legitimate way of solving anything in the Middle East, and obviously it has never worked and never will work. I think what Netanyahu is attempting to do, and hopefully is doing, is appealing to the people on his right. When he took that position of the two-state solution back in 2009, he was clearly trying to appeal to the center. But his problems right now are not on the left. His problems are on the right. And he has to shore up that support. One of the interesting things that happened just hours ago, 12 hours before the elections started in Israel, is that Tzipi Livni, who was going to be in a rotating prime ministers with Herzog, announced that she no longer is going to be rotating. Herzog will be uniquely and unilaterally the prime minister if the Zionist Union Party wins. That's a big development.
At Israel's holiest site for Jews, Isaac Herzog said a prayer to fulfill what he calls his destiny. In a country used to warriors turned politicians, he seems an unlikely candidate for prime minister.
I've always suffered from a certain underestimation.
Even his high-pitched voice has become an issue in this campaign, something the mild-mannered U.S.-educated lawyer known as Bougie has acknowledged when he poked fun of himself in this campaign ad using someone else's voice.
הסיבה שחלקכם עדיין מתלבטים אם להצביע עבורי היא הקול שלי.
He comes from political royalty, the Israeli version of the Kennedys. His grandfather, one of Israel's first chief rabbis, his uncle, a revered foreign minister, and Father Chaim Herzog was Israel's 6th president. Benjamin Netanyahu, falling behind in the polls, dismisses him as a lightweight who can't stand up to Iran or the Palestinians. In a recent campaign ad, portraying himself as a babysitter to Herzog. But Israeli voters, for the first time in years, are more focused on social and economic issues than security, something Netanyahu was not counting on when he made his high-profile and controversial speech to Congress this month. Herzog has gotten a boost from a growing get-out-the-vote movement with one goal: get rid of Bibi. The group's secret weapon is Jeremy Byrd, a former Obama campaign strategist who schooled the group in grassroots tactics that helped propel Obama to office. Netanyahu is calling foul, pointing to a worldwide effort to unseat him.
There's fatigue. There's a lot of disappointment from Benjamin Netanyahu. I think his era is over.
If elected prime minister, Herzog says he would reignite peace talks with the Palestinians and instead of picking a fight with the U.S., would work with Washington and its allies on a nuclear deal with Iran that's better than the one currently being negotiated.
Because security is not only the barrel of the gun. Security has got much bigger than that. It has to do with regional alliances. It has to do with our strategic alliance with the United States. Clearly, I'm ready for all of this.
He made a pretty dramatic shift yesterday. Some think it was a sort of last-ditch effort to bring in some more voters because he might have been concerned.
Well, you're right. Yeah, he shifted. He said that if he's reelected, Martha, there would not be a Palestinian state. Now, this is a shift from a speech that he gave in 2009, saying that he was open to talks of a two-state solution. with the Palestinians. So again, as you said, it's a move that some say is really to draw votes from some of the other parties. But this isn't the only issue. One of the biggest issues, the main issue, some people say, is the economy here in Israel, the high cost of Israel's living. Okay, so that's a major issue. And also another thing I should point out is that Prime Minister Netanyahu's character and personality have really come under attack here. Some believe that this is really a referendum vote on Prime Minister Netanyahu. But again, as you pointed out, Martha, that doesn't mean, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean he's going to lose this election. We'll see. Again, the exit poll results come out at 10 tonight local, 4 p.m. Eastern, so we should start getting a better handle on what direction this election is going at that point. Martha.
I think it's a fascinating drama playing out that truly has a big impact around the world. Thank you very much, John. And when you go back to the controversy that swirled here with the speech that he gave, it's possible that it may have hurt him at home giving that speech. He's clearly made his focus on his concerns about Iran, and there are signs that the people in Israel are more concerned about their pocketbooks.
The only thing about Israel, though, all politics are local, right? Yeah. Whether it's the economy in Iran, that is a local issue for the future of Israel. More on that coming up as voters head to the polls there. There are new questions about whether or not the Obama administration got involved in Israel's election, possibly helping fund an anti-Netanyahu group. Former Ambassador John Bolton will answer that question, standing by live in a moment here.
Any Israeli election is incredibly important to the United States because of the strategic alliance, because it is a democracy in the messiest neighborhood in the world. But this one's personal for President Obama. That's what is fascinating. Benjamin Netanyahu, seeking another term as prime minister, just a couple weeks ago was standing in the Capitol behind me, essentially saying the President of the United States is wrong. Don't trust him in these Iran negotiations. And just yesterday, he said, if I'm reelected, if I'm the prime minister, there will not be a Palestinian state while I'm prime minister. From the White House perspective, they can't come right out and say we want the other guy to win, and there are several other candidates, but Isaac Herzog is the leading rival candidate. But the president has made no secret of the fact he wants change.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no love lost between Obama and Netanyahu, and if Netanyahu stays prime minister, you're looking at a relationship between the U.S. and Israeli leaders over the next 2 years that is essentially going to be a freeze. So they would love the opportunity to work with someone else. And Netanyahu's position on Iran has obviously caused a lot of divide, but this position that he's taken now on a Palestinian state just adds another level of tension to this. The United States just sees that as an untenable position for Israel. They see it as unrealistic, and if Netanyahu is going to stay prime minister and hold this position, then it essentially freezes peace talks and leaves the Obama administration with no chance of pursuing that.
And Bush, Gore, 2000 aside, we usually know on election night who the next leader is. We might not know this one for weeks because number one, you have these two leading parties and you have several smaller parties and they range the political spectrum, and whoever wins tonight, presumably whoever wins, gets the first chance to form a coalition government, but Netanyahu once came in second and got to form a coalition government, so we may be at this coalition chess for a while, right?
Yes, and I think that the Obama administration is probably going to hang back for a while until this all shakes out. Though I certainly think that when they look to Benjamin Netanyahu, they don't feel like they have much of a partner.
Hang back, or at least try not to leave fingerprints.
Yeah, don't leave fingerprints.
Elections underway right now. They're voting in Israel. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., Democrats and Republicans on a Senate panel are launching an investigation into taxpayer dollars provided by the Obama administration to an American nonprofit group. Now, that group is campaigning against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Former Deputy White House Chief of Staff Karl Rove has a problem with that.
It just strikes me that this is just too cute by half. They give them money. They announce that the group then announces it's going to embark in a groundbreaking effort around the Israeli elections. Then they partner up with a group that has one goal, which is the defeat of the sitting prime minister of Israel. That is stinky. And they hired President Obama's campaign director from 2012 to do it.
Carl, from last night with Greta, John Bolton, the former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor with me now, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
First, on the money, where are you on that?
Well, I think it warrants a congressional investigation. I think the Obama administration's done a lot more to defeat Netanyahu. The antipathy from the Obama White House toward Netanyahu is palpable, and I think they've done everything they can to shape a Netanyahu defeat.
Taxpayer dollars here, if this story plays out and develops the way we think.
That's something that I think Congress definitely needs to look into.
On the Obama administration, We know that political advisors from the U.S. and Israel, they've changed hands all the time on these elections. But how do you believe, as you just allege, that the Obama administration has undermined Netanyahu's reelection?
Well, I think the president's trying to say that he can't deal with Netanyahu. He's saying to the Israelis, if you want somebody who can deal with me, you've got to get rid of him. I think that motivated the attack on Netanyahu's speech to the joint session of Congress. And I think that the whole atmosphere the president's trying to create is intended to be unhelpful to Netanyahu. We'll see if that works.
Yeah, we'll see if that works indeed. What if Netanyahu loses?
Well, I think the main cause of the loss will be dissatisfaction with economic policies in Israel. Although Netanyahu's focused on security issues, I think there are a lot of economic issues that motivate the voters. But no doubt there will be a major change in Israel's foreign policy, both with respect to dealing with the Palestinians, with respect to dealing with Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I think it means almost certainly that Israel will not interfere with the deal the president is desperately trying to cut with Iran. The deal will go through. There will be no military strike by Israel against Iran's program. And to me, that means Iran is on the path inevitably to nuclear weapons.
And if he wins, what then? Status quo or
then
more?
I think he's got to consider his options. There's no doubt that if this deal is signed, Iran will have a free hand. It is foolish to say that anything they've committed to is more than minimally binding. It's all easily reversible. I think it's the negotiations themselves have already provoked a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Saudis, Egyptians, Turks, and others not waiting for Iran to demonstrate it has a bomb, but going ahead now to develop their own nuclear capabilities.
You think within those countries there's a process now underway? Saudi Arabia,
Egypt
Turkey,
and Turkey, all of them,
Egypt.
and maybe more, because they see that if the United States isn't going to stop Iran, they have to look to their own defenses and get a nuclear capability. I think the Saudis could purchase it from Pakistan very quickly. Others may have to go through the process of building nuclear reactors and gaining control over the nuclear fuel cycle. But there's no doubt, nobody in the Middle East wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. They see this deal, as do American critics of the deal, as an open highway for Iran to get.
Wow, that's a steep charge. So that race is already underway, you believe?
I think these negotiations have accelerated what would have happened on the day we knew Iran had a nuclear weapon. I think the Saudis and others now foresee it as essentially inevitable, and they're not going to wait. They're going to act now while there's still time, in their view.
Come back to the Netanyahu issue. There are those who are already saying 2 weeks ago when he came here to the United States and spoke before that joint session of Congress, joint meeting of Congress, that was a miscalculation, that he actually should have been giving more time and attention to the economy back in Israel. True or not?
Well, I think the failure to pay attention to the Israeli economic issues goes back over a period of years. It wasn't just one mistaken speech in the United States. I really think the whole controversy over this speech in America, in Israel, has been a tempest in a teapot. I think if Netanyahu comes in second, which doesn't necessarily mean he won't be prime minister, but if he comes in second, if Likud finishes behind the opposition, it will be because people believe he did not carry through on his election promises to open up the Israeli economy more. And unfortunately, that you lay at Netanyahu's own door.
Whether he wins or loses narrowly, you can still form a coalition that would keep him in power. That's the tricky part.
We may be in for a period of real uncertainty in Israel as these coalition negotiations play out. We may know the election results tonight, but we won't know who the next prime minister is, possibly for quite some time.
Great to see you in person. Thank you. John Bolton, the ambassador.